Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and let's talk a little bit today about this whole idea of people needing to avoid refined carbohydrates and what that even means. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Alright, this is something we really only started talking about when the low carb era came out. People started saying, hey, you need to avoid refined carbohydrates. Without ever really thinking about what that really means. And for long, you have people saying things like, oh, you need to avoid white rice, white potatoes, all this other stuff. You know, as if these are the actual causes of diabetes and heart disease and obesity and everything else. Without thinking about the fact that it's really fructose that we're concerned with. We're talking about one specific carbohydrate that when you refine certain foods gets concentrated into very unhealthy amounts. But let me ask people a question. Look at what countries in the world have the highest rates of obesity, highest rates of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, stuff like that. Is it countries that sit around eating mostly refined carbs, as a lot of people would put it, like white rice? Because I don't see that happening. What countries can you guys think of off the top of your head to where white rice is a staple in their diet and for most of the population accounts for at least half of their calories, if not more, every day? A bunch of Asian countries. Well, when you look at these Asian countries, do they have high rates of diabetes, obesity, and heart disease? No. But if refined carbohydrates like white rice with its high insulin response, its high glycemic index, being a very insulinogenic carb, shouldn't they have these problems? Meaning if foods that are insulinogenic cause diabetes and obesity, shouldn't Asians be the fattest fucking people on earth in their native countries? Shouldn't they all be diabetic? I mean, if they're sitting around, some of these people in certain regions and different Asian countries are getting 70% of their calories from white rice every week. These people should all be diabetic. They should all be fat if this is actually true, but they're not. They're relatively thin. They don't have diabetes. Now, people will say, well, maybe Asians are resistant to this. No, they're not. You bring them to America and put them on a traditional American diet. Well, I don't know if it's traditional. McDonald's and soda. What happens to these Asian people? They get fat and get diabetes. But white rice doesn't cause it? Well, same thing. People will talk about white potatoes or white flour and everything else. But, you know, again, you put someone on a mono potato diet, and people have done this. They almost always, if they've been eating a standard Western diet and they go on eating nothing but potatoes for a month, what happens? They lose a few pounds and their blood work improves. Because potatoes are very, very filling, but they're insulinogenic. And here's what people need to grasp. It's not the fact that certain foods have an insulin response. It's how your body responds to insulin that's the issue. All right? High glycemic index carbs are not a problem if you don't have an insulin resistance problem. The people who get fat from all this are the people who combine a bunch of fat with a bunch of refined sugars. All right, that's your foods that trigger insulin resistance. That's your foods that trigger insulin resistance. Excessive amounts of fructose. All right, table sugar is 50% fructose by calorie. High fructose corn syrup is 55% fructose by calorie. The data we have out there shows that people who consume at least 50 grams of fructose a day chronically develop insulin resistance. Right? They tend to have insulin resistance. They tend to develop metabolic syndrome. They tend to develop fatty liver, just like an alcoholic does. That's about 400 calories of table sugar or about 380 calories of high fructose corn syrup every day. People who eat diets really high in saturated fat or in general just really high fat diets tend to become insulin resistant. In fact, people who go on ketogenic diets, their insulin resistance doesn't improve sometimes even when they lose weight because they stay on a high fat diet. And when they do eat carbs, notice they get sleepy. All right, anyone who's on a ketogenic diet, you think I'm messing with you. This has been studied. People have terrible insulin response who are on ketogenic diets when they do eat carbs. Even worse sometimes before they went on the ketogenic diet. They lose weight, they lose fat because it's an appetite controlling diet, but they tend to be very insulin resistant. They produce a very large insulin response to carbohydrates they eat. And those who follow cycling ketogenic diets know this because they know exactly what happens when they hit their carb up day, that first meal. They eat a bunch, they get hot, they get sweaty, they get sleepy. All right, classic signs of insulin resistance. It's saturated fat, it's fructose that we're concerned about, and particularly fructose. So when we talk about refined carbohydrates being dangerous, being a problem, we need to just call it what it is. Fructose is the problem. And you get most of that from refined sugars. But I mean, we need to call it fructose though, because otherwise people get confused on it. Because before long, they're thinking all sugars. They see some food that has X amount of sugar in it. Well, what if it's all glucose-based sugar? That's no different from a starch, really. Your body's not going to process it differently. Your digestive system breaks it down into glucose. It's released into the bloodstream. All right, it doesn't have to be processed by the liver like fructose does. And that's your problem. Fructose has to be processed by the liver. Now, here's the thing. If you eat a bunch of fructose and you're insulin resistant because you've been eating a lot of sugar and a lot of fat, what happens when you eat white rice or a white potato? You get a massive insulin response, an excessive amount. That's the problem. It's the way that your body handles insulin because of a terrible lifestyle and other food choices that you eat. That's the problem. It's not refined carbohydrates are not the problem. And I'm not saying people shouldn't eat whole grains. I generally eat a lot of whole grains. Whole grains are good for you. Fiber's good for you. But let's be honest here. To act like eating white rice is unhealthy or causes obesity or diabetes, why don't the countries that eat tons of it have these problems? And when you talk about a refined carbohydrate that is not fructose based, it doesn't have fructose in it, are you going to get anything more insulinogenic than white rice? People are concerned about fast absorption and an insulin response. There is no food that doesn't have fructose in it that you could possibly come up with that's going to be more insulinogenic than that. It's near the top. It's near the top. It's got an insanely high glycemic index. Yet countries that eat this as a staple don't have any of these problems. Why? They're physically active, they don't eat a lot of fat, and they don't have access to a lot of sugar. So because of that, their lifestyle revolves around them having a normal, healthy insulin response to carbohydrates, even refined carbohydrates. Therefore, they don't have a problem with white rice. And it's not genetic, because Asian people who come to Western countries and adopt our diet of fatty foods and lots of sugar, they develop the same problems everyone else does. This is not the problem. And again, whole grains are good. Like I said, I mean, if you need more fiber in your diet, yeah, you should consider dropping white rice for brown rice for a while. Definitely. If you, again, have not enough fiber in your diet, maybe you should replace your white pasta with whole wheat pasta. I personally only eat whole wheat pasta. I don't buy white pasta at all. Because again, I want to keep fiber in my diet. But to act like potatoes or white rice are the problem, people act like potatoes, white rice, white flour, that's what's making people fat. Come the fuck on. There's no data to support that. That's bullshit. That's fad diets. These foods don't make people fat in their native cultures. Same thing, people say, well, you know, look at some of these Italians in certain regions. It's like, yeah, but they're eating a ton of red meat and saturated fat with the white pasta. Not the white pasta that's the problem. If they were to eat 97% lean beef in their pasta, they wouldn't be obese either. It's pretty straightforward. So why then, when we know all of this, do people sit around and harp upon refined carbohydrates and act like it's all refined carbohydrates that we're worried about? Well, because that's what they've been told and that's what they repeat. When the reality is it's not that big of a deal. Refined grains just really aren't that big of a deal. Like I said, they're only a problem if you're not getting enough fiber in your diet. If you need more fiber in your diet, you're not getting enough vegetables and stuff. Yeah, whole grains are great. You should generally eat them, but white rice isn't going to be a problem. Throw in some extra veggies with it, you'll probably be fine. It might be a problem if you're insulin resistant because of the other aspects of your diet, but you know what? Someone who has been lifting weights, doing cardio, got into a normal body weight, normal body fat, they don't have to be lean, just be normal and healthy. You know what? They do that and they quit eating all the table sugar and deep frying everything and eating big fatty cuts of meat. They'll probably be able to handle white rice just fine without any problems at all. People need to understand it's not all refined carbohydrates that we should be worried about. It's the fructose that we need to be worried about. The fructose, and we're getting most of that from refined sugars. Could you get enough fructose from eating fruit to be a problem? Yeah, but most people aren't going to eat that much fruit. I mean, yeah, fruitarian might have problems with it eventually. And again, a lot of them are going to argue they don't, but they will. Do it long enough, you'll have problems. But someone who's not eating 80+% of their calories from fruit is probably not going to get enough fructose from fruit or most vegetables or things like that for it to really be a problem. You're really only going to have a problem with it when you're eating a bunch of table sugar, high fructose corn syrup, even honey. Honey would count, and it's a total natural sugar. It's naturally occurring. It's 50% fructose also, and it will fuck you up just as bad as table sugar will if you overindulge in it. Reality check. It's not even about it being refined versus being natural. It's the fructose content that's the concern, because your body doesn't process fructose the same way it does other carbohydrates. All right, most other carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks them up, they hit the bloodstream, they're usable as fuel. Your body can't do that with fructose. Your liver has to modify the structure of it before you can use it, which puts a strain on your liver. Again, leads to insulin resistance in the liver and everything else. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.